Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 263 of The Team House. I'm Jack, here with Dave, and we're really happy to have in the studio tonight Jason and Andy. And I mean, these guys have both been guests or co-hosts or both actually on the show before. And tonight we're just getting all together because the two of you have started another show on the channel, Eyes On, talking about topical national security events. So thank you both of you for making the trip out here.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for having us, man.
I'm still waiting for the
check?
Yeah.
You can keep waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube. Yeah, thanks guys. But yeah, so what is Dimitri? What is the intention behind this episode besides the four of us just bullshitting?
I mean, it's generally that, but it's also to like give it a little boost,
A little
letting
bit
everybody
of
know
love
about Eyes
for the
On
show.
and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So guys, tell us then about Eyes On. Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah. Jason.
So-
Jason came up with the name, by the way, which is
Okay.
inspired. Yeah.
I did. So basically, we just decided. It was decided. Look, we want to branch out from Team House, but we had some hard rules. You know, first of all, it was apolitical. You know, we don't care who anybody supports, doesn't support, whatever. As much as possible, we try to keep it political, and we try to keep it relevant to things that are going on in the news. Like if the news cycle is hot, we'll talk about that. But if it's not, you know, we can bring in guests. We can, you know, just basically it's just three guys just talking, you know, about stuff that's going on, and we'll take listeners or watchers questions and try to answer those as much as we can, and we just like to have fun.
Yeah. Now, for those of you who have not actually seen the issues with Jason and Andy,
There are many issues.
yeah, and shame on you if you have not watched. You might be out of the shot there, Andy. I'm not sure.
No, you're good.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
why Jack was
Yeah.
edging me over.
Yeah. But can you give us like a brief background, your brief background, so people know like who these like two Joes are that are on?
Yeah,
talk
Absolutely.
about.
Yeah, my
current events?
background is very brief. Former Marine Corps. I worked in special operations. In nuclear security for a while on a response team. While I was doing that, was going to college, married, kids, blah blah blah, and was recruited for to CIA by a cousin of mine. He's retired, long retired now. Did that for almost 8 years and left there, and now I'm still in the federal government doing recruiting for naval intelligence, and
That's gotta be hard
and
work.
doing this, So
did you recruit that kid that was selling? He was giving out secrets on Discord.
No, he was Air Force.
I'm not saying
that
anything
wasn't
until
Jason.
Oh,
money.
okay.
But no, I'm just kidding. No, not at all. I mean, my part of it is really just resumes.
Yeah.
And then basically, you know, we'll collect resumes, look through them. Hey, these people are, you know,
And send them where they need to
and
go.
send them to the commands, the
Yeah.
different commands.
You
and
know,
stuff, so.
when you look at that story, by the way, that kid fucked up so many people. My security clearance still going through the. You know, I'm like, I don't do this shit. But when you look
You're
at
not
it
on
and you look at the
Discord, are you sure?
background story, you know, the need to know. Every time something goes wrong, not every time,
Yeah.
but most of this stuff now is need to know. You know, I get it. Back in the past, we had Ames and Pollock and Walker, who did have need to know. But it seems like now it's not a problem in necessarily them giving people security clearances they shouldn't have. It is definitely a problem in people getting information they
Yes,
don't
Having
need.
they don't need.
access.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And Andy, what about you? Your background.
Guys, this is so strange. Yeah, a Marine, infantry, special operations officer. Since retiring in 2019, it seems as though I've been spending a lot of time with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
And if you're looking for like a hint to what our OnlyFans would look like, definitely check out one of Andy's episodes.
Please
Yeah.
don't.
As you guys know, I like to sit in the middle so I can do some downhill skiing.
There'll be trading cards coming out soon. Awesome.
You wouldn't be the only Jack Murphy then that, anyway.
That puts things up the coal chute.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack, I got to say though, having you on, and this isn't me being a sycophant, and so they
Continue.
that was really good. Is hearing all the all the dirt you've been digging up. One of my favorite stories, of course, and we'll get into later. It's still, the I think we met through the dick pic story. I think that was yeah.
No. I met, that's because you wrote the book and I hit you up on LinkedIn.
Oh, was that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, there was a connection.
Yeah.
Not
well, thank goodness you
with
did.
a dick pic. That's not how you hit him up.
Yeah, you sent me
Okay.
one. No. But yeah, no, and thanks for having me on your guys' show like right away, and that actually drove a lot of people, surprisingly more than we thought, to the news outlet that
What?
Sean and I are writing.
Oh, did it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I thought you
Yeah.
were about to say. I was very glad to bring my fan base to your show for one day because we saw a blip, the Jack blip, and down.
Yeah.
But did it really? That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, no, it did. It
Excellent.
put a lot of attention on
I
it.
saw Sean Naylor was reposting.
Yeah.
That, so I'm glad.
Yeah.
It did.
So, the high side is the outlet, and you can subscribe for $5 a month. And we got a lot of stuff on there right now. Special forces, classified programs from back in the old days to stuff that's happening today in Gaza. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Yeah. What? Can you talk a little bit about the Gaza? What are you hearing that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit dated because things have moved
Yeah.
so quickly, but I wrote a piece about how after the October 7th attacks happened, there's a huge JSOC deployment.
Oh, that's right. You talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
To
gonna-
ostensibly do hostage rescue missions if they were called upon. Or, I mean, they didn't know how bad the war would get either, so they were also prepped for like evacuations,
Yeah.
like NEO kind of operations as well.
Yeah. That was a poorly kept secret. Wasn't it?
Kind of, yeah. Well, when that number of C-17s start landing in Cyprus,
Yeah.
it kind of, yeah.
And wasn't there a picture of? Didn't a picture
Oh
appear in
yes,
the
the
paper?
White House
Yeah.
published
Yes.
a photo of the
Yeah.
guys.
Oh, that
And they were
caused hell.
Delta guys helping with the security piece for Biden's visit. And the White
Yeah.
House. put
Yeah.
that
Which,
out.
which was fairly innocent, but
Yeah.
it made it,
Yeah.
it made it look like that.
It went
you know.
bad quick.
Yeah, that was probably inadvisable, but so yeah, no, that was cool. And recently you had Alex Hollings on the show. I was watching
Yeah.
that today.
Great episode.
I mean, I knew he was a rock star. I had no idea what a rock star he was.
Oh, yeah.
Until we get it. Jason and I got complaints. Hey, how come you guys are talking?
Yeah.
Dude,
Stop
Alex
interrupting
is-
the
yeah.
star.
Who are these fuckers?
Yeah, Alex is a ton of fun.
He is. Dave and I were talking about it. Like you can hear it in his voice, just how passionate he is about it.
Yeah.
And like I said, at the end of it, you're like, wow, when were you a pilot? Never.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he was never a pilot. He just loves his stuff and he knows exactly what he's talking about. And I'm an aviation geek myself, and I feel like ashamed to have a conversation with him because he just knows it all.
Well,
Yeah.
the cool thing is that you get your aviation geeks. In fact, we call them pilots. But but then you get guys who really understand how that capability gets
Fits into the-
integrated
yeah,
to
yeah,
the,
the
and
picture,
that's what
yeah.
Alex does.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's awesome.
And so the idea behind the show is, what are you looking to do? 1 a week, 2 a week? Where are you at right now? Is there a day or time?
Yeah, Wednesday. When do we release it normally? Consistently, Wednesday and Saturday,
Okay.
like midweek and
Yeah.
weekend.
Okay.
And so if nothing has really happened, we're not going to just
Do
Make something
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
bullshit. But
Yeah.
That makes sense.
fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of stuff's been
Happening. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of why I went to Israel, was to get material. I was
Yeah.
researching a book, by the way, which I'll definitely see if I can plagiarize some of your stories, Jack, in the book without acknowledging.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I'm here for. The New York Times does it, so I don't feel bad.
But it's in seriousness. The hardest thing is to anticipate. When Dee suggested, I was thinking, oh man, this is going to be really embarrassing. This is going to be like three people
That's exactly
watch us, and it's going to be. But then we started doing it. I thought, well, this is really cool. I don't really give a shit if as long as Dee wants to do it.
Yeah.
My friends watch it, at least they lie to me now. But the point is, hopefully it's reasonably intelligent, well-informed conversation. We're not just arguing back and forth.
Exactly.
Obviously, we know something about the topic. We do research, and the idea is that we're presenting a perspective or perspectives that aren't commonly seen in the media.
Right.
So insights, I suppose you call it.
Right.
Absolutely.
And because you've got to always ask yourself, hey, what are we giving that you're not getting from other things? And
Right. Well, and I think one of the challenges, even when they do have experts on like big media productions, it's such a rapid soundbite that that a lot of times, even if those people really do have solid expertise in that field, which a lot of times they don't.
a lot of times they don't.
But even when they do, they really can't give any nuance or background to what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They just have to hit the talking points.
Absolutely.
And and the challenge is to do that without sounding like you're just without talking too pontificating.
Right, yeah.
Right,
So I
right.
think it works pretty well because Dee jumps in, asks questions. You need a guy who doesn't understand acronyms or the military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's good
Or,
at that.
or life
He'll
in general.
Jump in and say.
Yeah.
You're saying Dee's good at not
You need a
understanding
dummy.
things?
Yeah, you
Yes,
need a dummy
he
to
plays
set it up.
He's
the ignorant well.
It's also
Brilliant actor.
you guys aren't doing also like the 2 and 3 hour marathons
No.
we sometimes do on
Yeah,
the team
no.
house. It's like 20, 30,
Yep.
40 minutes.
Yeah, we've got to compliment as in it's got to be different than the team house,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And in
Right.
order to augment it.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you say,
So-
it's just long enough where if you're on a run, you're
Right.
PTing, something like that, you can get it in, and get
Cover
your
the
fix
top
and be
3
done.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
if you're Dave Park on the way to work and you're interested in the things that Dave Park is, a highly intelligent human being, but also similar background, interest in national security, and you've got half an hour, all right? You don't listen to NPR or even the Team House podcast. You're
Right.
like, I'm going to see what's happening in the world.
Yeah. No, and it's good because it really, it brings a side to our show that we don't have. Jack and I both, neither of us really want to do anymore. Like we did when we first started the show. That's what the show was, is we'd get drunk and talk about like 3 news things. But we didn't do it. But we didn't do any research. We didn't do any
but
research.
you were brilliant at getting drunk part.
Yeah.
And another thing.
Yeah, and another thing.
slurring your words.
Another thing about Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Those days are gone now.
Yeah.
Look at us. We've come a long way.
Yeah, and so it's good to have that angle, the topical angle. Do you guys find it hard because you say it's apolitical, where I assume like you're not necessarily taking a side based on the political platform, but so many of current news stories end up political.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I say apolitical, stupid policy is stupid policy.
Right.
What we think. So criticize, but no one wants. I don't think anyone. One thing we don't want to be is an echo chamber.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So
For anybody.
let's take what's going on in Israel right now.
Right.
I can argue. I think with equal vigor, intellectual acuity, both sides of the argument, right? But you can't get in those conversations
Right.
in day-to-day life because everyone is so. I
Yeah.
just came back from Israel, itself.
Right.
And I know that you if you want to, but at the same time, you do. For the sort of person we hope is watching this, they want to kind of hear, okay, what are all the what are all the issues?
Right.
Why are, for instance, and we're not going to go into it here, but 30,000 civilians, in how does that happen? We've all been in urban clearing
Right.
operations, blah blah blah.
Right.
How did it come to this? What happened there? I mean, you can talk about that in terms. It's tricky, but without getting into the highly
Right.
emotional.
If it's
volatile
relevant to the
aspect.
story, then we're going to bring the politics into it. If it's relevant, but you can pull politics or a politician into anything
Right.
if you want.
Right.
You know,
Right.
look at the trash out on the streets out here, whatever it is.
Right,
You know,
right.
we try to avoid that as
Right.
much as possible.
Yeah.
And while at the same time giving listeners what they're asking for. So if they're asking for questions about certain things that might pull us in a certain direction, well, we're gonna have to address it.
Sure.
You know, we have no choice. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and some of the comments are nice. Like I think the very first comment I read, which I'm bad at it. I read your comments, but then again, I don't. The first one was, I think it was after our first episode was, oh boy, two grunts talking about the news. And I was like, damn.
Just where you want to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, the idea behind it isn't, the classic, veteran rant from the front
Yeah,
seat of an
absolutely
F-150 with
Yeah.
the cell phone. Yeah, no, you're not going for that.
No, absolutely not. No.
But do we have questions for these guys? Have we gotten any in for Andy or Jason?
No, none yet. We have some for like eyes on, but it's like pertaining.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh, it's like pertaining to like actual geopolitical shit.
Do you want us to
You-
talk about
yeah,
a subject?
You
want
want
to talk
you
about?
want them to hit it up?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Don't rush me.
So yeah, while we're waiting 1 second, I'll tell you guys, please subscribe to our Patreon. If you guys subscribe to the Patreon for $5 a month, you get access to all these episodes ad-free, and you support the channel. We really appreciate it. It's awesome. The Patreon keeps us going as YouTube is kind of shit in the bed right now. So thank you everyone who subscribes. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, which is completely free, costs you nothing, and it just helps us get some more viewers.
Jack, while we're waiting for Dee to drag it up, do you want me to hit some highlights from my trip? Or?
Nightlife? Yeah.
No nightlife, no. No, I mean, sadly, Israel was, that is the most empty that I've ever seen.
Really?
Ben Gurion Airport, Tel Aviv, it's sobering, and the hotel where I was staying was full of evacuees from the
Other
south.
parts of
Yeah.
the
But just like we've seen here, I mean, everyone slowly pulled the nation very strongly together. But I think, as I was talking about a little bit before, a lot of bitterness, certainly among military guys, feeling that perhaps the IDF had taken its eye off the ball in the last 2 decades. In fact, and just so you guys don't think I went out there and just read articles. Thank you to everyone who helped out, but I met an extraordinary number of people, fairly, to include 2 former national security advisor, former cabinet member for Netanyahu, senior military officers. So it wasn't just, talking to guys in bars, which you also get a lot of info from. But bottom line is, I don't want to go on about it. I think that the real takeaway is that I just can't see any other future other than a regional war. And I did not say that before going. I was kind of I'm not familiar with the situation, been there many times.
There's no exit strategy.
Yeah. Well, just for the benefit of your audience, because I know we're talking about this before, the key issue is the fact that it's not Hamas, it is Hezbollah, and we can have a Hezbollah episode. It won't be this one, but it's a good topic, right?
Yeah.
And so Hezbollah since 2006 is a different organization, and they have. Israelis will tell you 150,000 missiles. Of course, about 100,000 of those are rockets. But that doesn't matter, as we're talking about here.
Yeah.
When you have a country of 10 million people, more high-rise apartments per square mile than most countries in the Middle East, the nuclear power plant, chemical plant, the handful of, the maybe 24 really accurate long-range missiles, Scud-2s or the Fado 110s, which can drop, half a ton of explosives. those things are accurate, and they can take out critical infrastructure, and then just the weight of those are missiles alone, let alone drones. That's 18 Israelis will tell you this, and I did the math. It's true. That's 18 rockets or missiles per square mile, all right, and all with sizable warheads. And what they're doing right now is launching this thing, as I explained, called a Burkan, which is like a barrel bomb over the border at Israeli checkpoints. So going up there and seeing all the empty communities and every single one, soldiers explaining, and they all get it. They're like, this is, we're going to war. There's no way. This is part of our ethos. That if our sovereignty is violated, people are forced out of their homes. We have to correct that. And no Prime Minister of Israel, regardless of background, is going to be able to say, hey, that's okay.
And again, this is what you're being told. This is not your.
Yeah. There's no, and it's really interesting. I'll shut up in a moment. But in the war between, first of all, this isn't a war between Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah. It's between obviously Israel and Iran, and the Israelis have been banging the drum a long time, saying this is an existential threat. Now. And I wouldn't, it's certainly a very concerning strategic threat, because it's not just about Hezbollah's capability, it's about the puppet master.
Right.
And if you look at the rhetoric all the way through, from Khomeini, from Nasrallah,
Right.
There's no stepping down.
Right.
The only time Nasrallah steps down, this is what I was talking about, there's an interesting kind of a, rules of the game, the Israelis will say, and Hezbollah understands this. All right, the fighting on the border. If it's in Shaba Farms, the area, when the Israelis pulled out of Lebanon, there's an area called Shaba Farms that the Hezbollah decided was still part of Lebanon, or should be part of Lebanon. Syria claimed it. It's part of Golan Heights. But anyway, the point is this, that there was some kind of an agreement that what happens there stays there. As long as Israeli outposts on Shaba Farms are the only ones being shot at, and the Israelis are returning fire at Hezbollah, then that's cool. But if it goes away from Shaba Farms, that means a red line, and it has. They've been hitting all these settlements. So once that is crossed, it's invasion time, unless Nasrallah makes a commitment. Hey, we are not going to do that anymore. You guys can come back. What are the chances of that? Yeah. Hezbollah's in a very strong position. Nasrallah probably does not want to go to war right now, but it may not be his decision. Yeah. The Israelis, or who knows, maybe the Iranians decide it. Nasrallah doesn't want it because he wants to consolidate his power base in Lebanon before he takes on Israel. And remember what happened in 2006.
Right.
He lost. Yeah, they ultimately gained some traction, but he had some problems internally, domestically, because of all the trouble that it caused. The other piece is that I've been aware of this incrementally. But now the Lebanese government is Hezbollah. You look at their cabinet. They can, in order to make a decision within the cabinet, it's not the president or the prime minister, who are decided based on their religion. The cabinet makes decisions for the government, and they've got to have a majority vote, and each of the religious, the Shia, Sunni, and Christians each have a third members of the cabinet. Well, Hezbollah. And it's got to be unanimous vote. So if Hezbollah's got members in the cabinet, they're essentially controlling the Lebanese government. They've got their own communications network, now secure. They've got they've up in the north where the longer range missiles are. Their level of concealment is incredible. I mean, yes, they've always put missiles in, high-rise apartments and things in Beirut, but now they've got they've got a tunnel system with hydraulic lifts and everything that'll pull missiles up, and then I mean it's like Thunderbirds. I mean I've seen aerial photographs and imagery. The point is that these, it's not going to be something that a 40-mile incursion is going to be able to stop. And of course, remember in 2006, and indeed back, during the war in Lebanon, they found that incursions couldn't stop the rockets because of, the way LH does them. They set them up, and then someone else comes along unarmed and does a quick touch point.
This is exactly what the United States has been trying to stop from happening since all this blew up, is to stop it from exploding into a larger regional war.
And I'm coming back very pessimistic, I gotta tell you, and I'm not a Chicken Little, but I just can't see anything other than.
Do you think that all of this has successfully shattered the potential normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, or is that continuing?
Here's the weird thing. It's kind of a not a reversal, but it's different. 1948, the Arab nations were adamant, even when they were on the back foot, when Israel declared independence, and then you had Syria, Jordan, Egypt. I mean, it converging on Israel, and Jerusalem almost fell. It was a very bloody war at the birth of Israel. But back then, when the U.S. was, trying to get everyone to the negotiation table, even when they knew that they were losing ground, the countries attacking Israel would not recognize the state of Israel. It was known as the entity. In fact, it wasn't until after '73, Sadat was, I believe, the first Arab leader to
say the name.
Say the name.
I remember when I was in Syria, they'd refer to it as like the Zionist occupational entity.
The entity, Zionist entity. Anyway, so now, here's my point. Now the Arab nations, because they've grown beyond, they never really give a shit about the Palestinian problem. It was useful.
Right.
All right. And now they've grown beyond it. It's great to to do a swirly whirly on the Israelis when they're
but it's better to make money.
But it's better to make money. So they're like, there was a lot of posturing and everything, but now they're saying, listen, we'll support a two-state solution, and but Israelis 95% against it. The people, from 82, which was the original incursion into Galilee, right? Not the original. They've been going on throughout the 70s, but the big one in 82, Operation Peace for Galilee. A lot of Israelis will point to that and say that's where we started to go downhill in doctrine, training, and everything. Before that, we had a war-fighting military. We had guys who are, that was it. I mean, you the household names, Moshe Dayan. I'm not saying they're heroes of ours.
I mean,
Ariel Sharon.
Netanyahu.
So all of these guys, right? And 73 war was their last. They'll say this. A lot of Israel. That was the last good war in a sense. The one in Lebanon started to see a phenomenon that Israelis hadn't seen before, which was people refusing to serve in Lebanon, and it got worse. There was a peace movement, growth of the peace movement. All of that went away on 7 October.
Sure.
But the concern is, and this, this is what I'm researching, that over the previous 3-4 decades, not just 10 years, the culture, the readiness of the IDF had gone downhill, and that is such. We can talk about the military here being fucked up, and it doesn't really affect anyone, right? But there, as you know, it's so firmly everyone served in the IDF. The generals have, they have tremendous respect among population. It's so this was doubly a shock because everyone feels horribly let down.
Right. Right.
Intelligence failure it wasn't process, it wasn't technical ability. They were getting all the indicators. It was
mindset.
It was confirmation bias.
That shit
Yeah.
doesn't happen here.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That's why they had 20 soldiers, female soldiers, killed with one weapon between them in a surveillance post just outside the walls of Gaza, right? And there's a lot of anger about that across the board. So anyway, what is happening? What is going to happen? I'm not predicting. I just feel sadly as though I can't see any alternative to war
Right.
at all.
How does how does all this fit in with, you have America, you have Europe, but you also have like the UN, who has come out heavily. And in fact, you talk about the UNRW, right? Or was it UNRW the members of the UN in the educational system that were
UNRWA. Yeah.
and also
Yeah.
you have the UN basically passing all these resolutions against Israel, but not saying anything about anything else going on.
Haven't they shot down every ceasefire though?
There's I'm not sure. I'm just talking about since October 7th. There's been this very weird alignment in the West, right? About where I think Biden came out strongly for Israel and initially, and he had a solid message, but that wasn't parroted or supported everywhere that we would. And not that the UN is the West.
That's not unusual, right? I mean, UN. You look at the history of the UN and Israel.
Yeah.
It's always always been that way. And when resolutions are passed, I forget which one. The one that said that there can be no militias south of the Litani River, right? Resolution. Someone's going to correct me. 1701, right? The UN doesn't enforce it. They don't have the means to enforce it. Yeah. And then Nasrallah got Hezbollah reclassified within Lebanese law as, I forget what it was, not a militia.
Troops.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not funny. But Nasrallah too, when you talk to Israelis, they have tremendous, of course they don't admire him, but they tremendous respect for him. I've heard him, genius, brilliant. They're unstinting in that.
In terms of getting what he wants and what benefits him.
Just everything.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got their own radio station. They're producing, I've got videos here of them. They'll fire a Burkhan. Yeah, you remember those ridiculous Al-Qaeda videos we used to watch? Yeah. Hezbollah has some pretty slick ones.
Yeah.
They've got, I'll show you, they've got quite a good-looking dude, very kind of almost funny. Hello, my enemy. I hope you're having a shitty day.
Yeah.
And it's about to get worse. It's like Western humor.
Yeah.
And you can't help thinking, even the Israelis are like, hey, check this out. Look.
Yeah.
But I mean, so you can imagine the hold these videos are having among the population in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Just real quick point on UNRWA. So it's not unusual for UN organizations who get local workers for them to turn out to be bad actors. That's not really, I don't think even from an Israeli perspective, the biggest issue. Biggest issue is this. UNRWA, in their eyes, has propagated not just the dream of a Palestinian home, that's not the point, but has propagated the hatred.
Right.
50% of schools in Gaza are UNRWA. And the Israelis fear, some justification that what is being taught. So they're just bringing up kids to be.
Oh yeah, if you look at the footage from they're not shy about putting this online. If you look at the footage from some of those schools, it's harrowing.
Yeah.
It's how they're raising their children to want to be martyrs.
But the tough part is there's no alternative to UNRWA.
Right.
I mean, UNRWA is the government of Gaza. It's not, Hamas made a big deal of providing social services. And that's the three legs, both Hamas, that Hamas wanted to have and does have, but Hezbollah is really strong in social, political. By social, it's all the, remember after 2006, Iran provided $400 million to Hezbollah to help rebuild Lebanon. So Hezbollah came out of the woodwork, and now they're the heroes. They're
Right.
rebuilding, and they blocked from the Lebanese government from taking a part in that. Okay, so it's kind of the Hamas has the same ideals,
Yeah.
but they're not. They do some social stuff, but it's just kind of for show. It's UNRWA who's doing all the
Right.
the work of the government with
Right.
There's no one else to fill that vacuum. So
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
take that space up, and if that's what's keeping the lights on, if that's what's getting my child fed and educated, well,
Right.
what am I going to say bad about them?
Right.
So that's what Israel is fighting against, I guess.
Right.
They're up against is that how do you convince someone again whose child is being fed and educated and homes are being built? How do you convince them that that's a bad organization?
Right.
It's tough.
Does Hezbollah have a little bit more, like, we look at Hamas and we look at sort of God, but then we look to the north, we look at Hezbollah. Because of the settlement issue, does Hezbollah do they have an easier time with gaining sympathy throughout the world because of the settlements and whatnot?
The Palestinians do certainly.
Yeah.
You've probably seen the coverage of what's been happening in the West Bank. There's been trouble between settlers and Palestinians. On Hezbollah's side, they have such a hold on the Shia population of Lebanon that it's just difficult describing. When we talk about our touch point is fighting Al Qaeda, right? Al Qaeda in Iraq, but clearly it was possible to separate Al Qaeda from the population because it happened. But when you look back, you realize why it happened. In Hezbollah, they are so. It's tragic how it happened. The Shia are back, in the 80s. In fact, when the idea first went into Lebanon, they protected the Shia against the Palestinians. There was a lot of trouble then. But gradually, the Iranian influence, Nasrallah took over. Iran was the puppet master behind this that turned Hezbollah into what it is now.
Yeah. Interesting. And then with, if we look at the history of Lebanon, like the Paris of the Middle East, right? Sort of, this idea, this Maronite Christian culture, and then slowly lose ground, and now they're, backers of one of the largest terrorist, organizations. Is this? Do you think this is a model that we have to be concerned about in the future, elsewhere in the world? Do you think that it's something that was able to happen just because of Iran, because of the surrounding neighbors?
Well, I think we're seeing. Syria's a mess too, right? But you're right. The cause of that mess is the same. Assad would have fallen in 2015. He was on he wouldn't have fallen in 2015, but he was on the ropes in 2015 when Hezbollah weighed in heavily, and of course the Russians came into. But it was Hezbollah that was doing the heaviest fighting, not the Russians initially. It was Hezbollah that turned the tide. They did a mass recruitment in Lebanon. They recruited guys. It's the same as the Rangers. They dropped their standards. They brought in a bunch of guys. No,
that's how I got in.
No, they did. They brought in. So they
over.
even distinguished it. The Radovan. I'm mispronouncing the name, but the guys, they're really, good guys. I don't mean that in a ethically good guys, but they're good soldiers.
Yeah.
They call themselves a Radovan. They tend to be on that border with Israel, and they launched all the kind of the conscripts into Syria. But the problem with that now is they've got a massive. They've got 30,000 guys with combat experience, more so than their IDF counterparts, who are pissed off, angry. They've been, they're involved in all kinds of things, the drugs trade and that. So again, even if you didn't have the dynamic of the settlements being emptied,
Right.
you've got this dynamic of the returning Hezbollah guys. And Nasrallah's trying to figure out what the fuck do I do with all these guys? I don't, they would like nothing better than to attack Israel. Sooner or later, the plan is probably, for Iran to tell Nasrallah that. The question is, what's going to happen before that?
And I think going, to your question about, is this a model that we should be looking at and concerned about? I think if you have a state, a proxy state that's, or state actor that's willing to fill the vacuum wherever that is, whether it's on the border here in Mexico, with Mexico, cartels do it, Sinaloa is out, another one comes in. If they're willing to fund that and arm that, then yeah, I think it's absolutely possible. And I think it is something that we, being who we are, need to be ahead of and see it coming and, not have that groupthink of, that's completely separate. Let's focus over here, because that's when it comes up and bites us in the ass, whether it's South Central America, Southeast Asia, somewhere else. If we see the rumblings of what's happening in the Middle East, that's where we need to, I'm not necessarily saying we need to insert ourselves physically,
right,
but politically we need to, be talking to these governments, say, hey, this is what we see on the horizon.
Right.
You see what's going on in the Middle East. Just be on your, mind your P's and Q's, and we'll be there just in case you need us,
It's interesting to me because we, when any of that, whether it was the cartels or Hezbollah, when any of that did the same thing, any of the, any actors did the exact same activities, but they were communists. Like, we were in there right away, right? Like we were concerned about that, rightfully or wrongfully, but that was a massive concern when it was against the Red Scare. Now, because it may not wear the label of communism, because it may be something else, or different actors, or multiple different actors. I wonder if we don't, we're less willing to, take like the covert action steps and things like that, because again, we're not fighting against communism now, and it doesn't seem like this global wave that we have to prepare against, but more it's these individual.
Yeah. The Cold War certainly focused policy.
Yeah.
It made it easy. Everyone could be consistent regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican. Yeah. The policy was containment,
right,
and everyone understood what that meant, and it meant sometimes making partnerships with unsavory countries.
Yeah, right.
But because that was the goal. It's like Kissinger, when he visited Israel in '73, in the middle of the '73 war, and Golda Meir's like, hey, you got to help us or the Jewish state will be gone. And he said, something, I'm paraphrasing, you got to understand something. I am first an American, secondly, national security advisor, and only third Jewish. And she makes famous comment, yes, but in Hebrew we read left to right, or right to left. But anyway, but his point was, hey, we can't go to war with Russia, and if you surround the Third Army, if you remember, Ariel Sharon drove across the canal with like 50 tanks, and they cut off the Third Army. Actually, it turned out to be more a brigade. It was a very costly attack, but they cut off the whole army in the Sinai, and it essentially held them hostage. And Golda Meir said, hey, 30,000 guys, we will kill them unless we get unless our prisoners are released, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that was when Kissinger.
And Kissinger was really worried that would bring the Russians into the war if the.
That was about the time when we backfilled them, or agreed to backfill their munitions to stop them from using nukes, right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the threat of nukes was it was Moshe Dayan who had said that, had put the and he hadn't informed other members of the cabinet. I mean, it was a serious. No, I mean, he had a moment. I mean, here's a hero. I don't know if you've seen the movie.
Well, they had some moments recently where people and government were talking about nuclear weapons.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. But one thing that I realized. I mean, I'd realized it before. First time I've been going to Israel since early '80s, but it really struck me this time was that there, everyone there in the military government, when it comes down to it, survival of the Jewish state is everything. Everything. And I use the term Jewish because that's what they, and someone said to me when I was talking about the hostages, and someone said to me, Andy, you got to understand what a awful dilemma this is for us. On one hand, we have this policy that we will always bring people back, always, even if it. I mean, you remember Galil?
one guy.
Yeah, Galil. I mean, they traded dudes who'd been killing Israelis. They did a prisoner exchange up north a few years ago where they handed back a Hezbollah guy who had killed a 10-year-old boy by pounding his head in with a rifle butt. They gave so they bringing their own people back is very, very important to them. But on the other hand, what is explained to me. But in the end, if it's a choice between that and survival of the Jewish state,
I think that came out pretty quickly that they were prioritizing killing Hamas above recovering hostages. Hostages was like a secondary, like way down there as far as what their military objectives were. Not that they don't care. But
it's it's heartbreaking there. I get it. Some of the hostage families but at the back of their mind, I think everyone kind of understands.
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think that Hamas would ever like be square about the hostages anyway. Like they were always going to be a tool. They were always going to be leverage, and I mean, it's one of the reasons why a lot of countries won't negotiate with the kidnappers because it starts to encourage.
Well, that's right,
Absolutely.
Dave. Yeah, that's why Hezbollah. That's how the 2006 war was kicked off. Hezbollah was determined because they'd had such success in kidnapping soldiers or families. That's why they kidnapped those two soldiers, and which sparked the war. And they didn't. They got the soldiers back, but they were dead. And I think probably that memory is in their mind that hey, we could play for this negotiation game and find out they're all gone. And while we're playing this game, Hamas would.
Do we have questions for these guys?
He's like, shut him up. D, give us a commercial break then.
He's filtering through.
We got it. Love the podcast, gents. What are your thoughts on the long-time de facto taboo / ban in D.C. against the ability to talk about Israel's nuclear arsenal?
I mean, I guess he means on like the part of the United States government. I mean, because officially that's like part of the understanding is like they're not going to Israel is not going to officially acknowledge their nuclear program.
Ambiguity. It's deliberate ambiguity.
They have allegedly like 400 nuclear weapons, but yeah, and our government doesn't acknowledge it either.
Yeah. I think politically, it was just if a political figure put it out there, even suggested that they have them, it now puts us as a whole, the United States, in a bad position. So it's just easier to just say, just don't talk about it.
Yeah, it's also one of those things where, I mean, as you're seeing right now, I mean, nuclear weapons are a deterrent, but they're also completely fucking useless.
Yes,
absolutely. They don't do anything for you.
Because your adversary has to be convinced that you are going to use them,
right?
And then
for them to be a useful deterrent.
You have to use it,
right?
And the Arabs don't even have the bombs, so
In this situation, they're absolutely useless.
Next question we have is the current situation blowback for the strike on Soleimani? How has Iran's combat experience in Iraq and Syria made Iran a more formidable adversary?
Experience in
Iraq and Syria.
Yeah. Well, I think that the scary thing is that Syria has been a battle laboratory for Iran.
Yeah, I think more physical.
Everything from TTPs to development of weapons to training of their guys to
waging unconventional warfare.
Yeah. I think it's more if we're talking experience, more than hey, let's put our physical people on the battlefield. It's more like a science experiment. Let's put all the pieces together, step back and see what works and what doesn't. and then we can move on to the next area, or that worked, let's do this. So I think it's, lack of a better term, it's been an immense success for them to see what works and what doesn't. Just throw money and weapons at it and see what happens.
But as far as like it being a retaliation for the Soleimani strike, I don't think so. I don't think so. The open question, which I mean, maybe it's known behind closed doors, but did Iran sponsor this attack to upset the normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia?
Yeah. So I would say there's no doubt in that. I mean, I was surprised how much I was shown when I was over there, but clearly, they wanted to. It's not like I'm an influential guy, but hey, look, here's what we have. They've got recordings of Farsi in Gaza during, before and during the fight.
I believe it.
Definitely, and they have. When you look at everything, the TTPs they used. When I went up to they've got the IDF has a center up north that just focuses on Hezbollah. And they showed me a plan they captured from Hezbollah around 2003, 2004. And it was for an incursion into Israel using 5 different attacks, bases, preceded by rockets. It was almost, I mean, you could have superimposed that plan down into Gaza. And the plan was obviously, at the time, the Israelis say this is an Iranian plan with sophistication. Sudden upgrade in all their equipment, weapons. I mean, Hezbollah is obviously, always has been, if anyone's not familiar, way ahead of Hamas, right? Israeli soldiers now will tell you, Hezbollah, like the Radwan, are far better equipped than the reservists up on the border.
Well, if you want to talk about like the battlefield laboratory and how maybe it improved TTPs, you saw them using drones to neutralize guard positions.
Exactly.
And it's not that no one else has done that before, but
practice. You got to practice, right?
Right.
You got to rehearse.
Well, and it's the same as. It's interesting to me because while people are correct in saying that like Gaza could be desolate, there are these ideas of an open air prison, but also you had these Hamas guys coming in on parachutes, which they didn't just watch a training video on that. Like they had obviously, they had obviously, they paraglided.
Have you seen that video at the music festival?
Yeah,
where the girls are dancing and you see the these guys coming in. I mean, it's like
unfortunately,
it's surreal.
I've seen too many of those videos, and the thing is that they obviously trained for this somewhere.
Yeah,
and like training paragliding teams to move in formation in Gaza probably didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No.
So these guys did train somewhere. They received training somewhere. You're not just making up paragliding techniques on the fly as you go. Yeah. So these guys were definitely equipped, trained, and practiced, rehearsed.
Yeah.
Outside of Gaza.
Yeah.
Can I jump in as the resident dummy?
Sure.
I mean, let's not. It's terrible what happened on October 7th, and it's terrible what's going on now. I mean, but Israel was asleep at the wheel. Supposedly the best, like one of the best militaries, one of the best intelligence apparatuses, and they dropped the ball. Dropped the ball is like too nice of a word to say.
Yeah. That's a good point, D. Let's talk about what did happen. So there's a whole division assigned to Gaza. In fact, it's called the Gaza Division, and it's just outside Gaza. 3 brigades purposefully kept close together with the headquarters. One of their missions is to react to any problems. All right. For some reason, there was no QRF, none. All right. It was in the SOP. There should have been a QRF. No one can remember, when it was live.
Right.
You know how it is.
Right.
It's just,
right.
And so it was Shabbat. It was a holiday, and the bases weren't emptied, but everyone was definitely there was definitely not a QRF, obviously.
Right.
So just before the attack, their military intelligence, Shabbat, got a very precise warning about that there were infiltrators. They were already through the blah 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 and location, everything. And so it's just this. The intelligence guys sent one. It's like a special forces platoon down there, but it was a small group of guys. I don't know how big, but I was told it's less than a platoon. And they got down there and like, holy shit. But somehow that word wasn't given to anyone else. Everyone said to me the part that we cannot answer is why for 12, depending on the kibbutz, 12, 18, 24 hours before there was a response.
Right, right.
And the only guys responding were ones and twos and groups of guys, reservists. I was talking to one guy who said, he's a special forces guy. He said, yeah, two of my buddies are there. We're seeing what's happening, and we're arguing. We're going to get called up. Why didn't we just grab our weapons and head down? And he said they were arguing for about 45 minutes, and then they got called up. And he's like, but when we got called up, we just sat there. We waited for a day or two, and now I'm thinking maybe we should have just gone.
Gone. Yeah. And even prior to that, though, because Dee brings up a really good point, and I don't know how the stories have developed since, because I haven't really been keeping up on it, but there were stories of intel reports, both local and foreign, coming in in advance of this.
Up to a year.
Yeah, way in advance of this. That they were being reported. They were being taken by the proper people in the proper way. And they were being reported, but it was like these mid-level officers who were like, no, this is too fanciful. This is like movie stuff. Like this would never happen. And so the intel reports hitting this like choke point and going nowhere else. And I don't know if you had heard something similar or if that's accurate.
Exactly. Actually, I spoke to, off the record, obviously, a former officer in their SIGINT unit. It's like called 8200. Right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, NSA will say that their SIGINT is absolutely, it's a question of scale, but their SIGINT is, they're every bit as well trained, sophisticated. They don't, and they have the tools to perform. But she said an interesting thing. She said, I think the problem with signals intelligence is we rely on it so much. We've lost our human skills. And it's become this panacea. And she said, if I could, I would disband the unit. No, I think she's half joking, but she said, we don't need an intelligence service. We've got everything in open source. They're telling us what they're doing. We just didn't want to hear it. It's essentially what she was telling me.
I mean, that's happened in the U.S. I mean, Carter, became such a huge believer in the NSA, cut the CIA way down, got rid of a lot of the old OSS guy, like a lot of that sort of experience, and and the CIA had to rebuild its human capability after we realized that SIGINT wasn't.
A lot of those cuts
panacea.
were made by Nixon.
Oh, were they? Okay.
Yeah, because of other like political stuff. He saw the CIA as the deep state.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it got carried out during the Carter administration. Yeah.
And we get into this. I think we get into these cycles of. I'm speaking for the U.S. Or not speaking for the U.S. about the U.S. We get into these almost like a prize, like a boxer. We get into this. We slug it out. Cold War. We slug it out, and then we get into this fog where we're like, between towards the end of the Cold War and leading up to 9/11, we were in this Cold War mentality just as terrorism was starting to really get its legs underneath it. So then we had to play catch up after 9/11. Then we were full blown on GWAT and we were slugging it out. And then we got into this punch drunk fog again. And now we're just playing catch up with getting back into traditional human and things like that. Of course, there's a place for technology for, all of that stuff. But battlefield intelligence, from what I have seen and learned, battlefield human is not the same as strategic human. It's not talking to a Chinese asset. Talking to a farmer in Kandahar or something like that. It's not the same thing. And we're still playing catch up to get back to where we were during the Cold War. And I think we go through those fogs, and it's being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
We make humans so painful. Too.
We really do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. We
But-
really
you gotta do all these steps, and if you haven't gone to FTC,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
fuck,
Did
man.
they take
But-
money? They're not an asset.
You know, a couple points. One, our military is the same way, right? We're always training for the last war. You know, and in between the Cold War and the GWOT, we had the war on drugs, where that's where because people want the money, right? So they go where the money is good.
Yeah.
And, you know, the other interesting thing is we had Jack Devine on recently, and he talked about this, and he's been involved in
He
almost
wrote that
every
book. He
co-
wrote, yeah, that was a good.
Yeah, he's like a legend in the
Absolutely.
agency,
Yeah, that's
and
right. Yeah.
and one of the things he said is that, you know, he would actually start another career service in the agency, and that we should know what's going on in Peru. We should know what's going on. We shouldn't, like after Afghanistan, after we left Afghanistan, you know, after the Russians were defeated, we didn't have any more presence, resources. Like, we should know what's going on everywhere as much as we can.
Absolutely.
And we don't. We are a very tunnel visioned, and a lot of that is budget, right? A lot of that is we have a certain amount of money, and where does this money go?
Yeah.
Where do we put our focus?
Yeah.
Any-
That's a great point, because when you think about it, I mean, Hezbollah is our enemy too.
Right.
Hezbollah has a lot of American blood on its hands
Yeah.
from the, you know, from the death of the Marines in '83. I mean,
Yeah.
that was Amal was but that was Hezbollah, all the way through, of course, to what was happening in Iraq.
Yep.
And Hezbollah was involved in that, absolutely. I mean, and yet we haven't made a determined effort
Yeah.
to go after them. And it is a global organization. And you're tracking, you know, in South America, the tri-border region. Everyone talks about it there. What I didn't realize is there is a big Shia population.
Yeah.
there.
Massive.
Yeah, which dates from the Lebanese Civil War.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, where there is a sizable Lebanese population, there is
Yeah.
Hezbollah.
Yeah.
The Anyway, I don't mean to make this a Hezbollah show, but it's
We're
sobering.
like, yes. Thank you.
Question, not from me, from a viewer. This is Ukraine. The guys mentioned the new Ukrainian sections being about 16 men, with half as drone operators. Do you think this is a fad or a future trend?
Oh yeah, no, I brought that up. I think it's just a recognition of what is important on the modern battlefield, which has always been important. But the tools are there now at the squad to be able to
do it,
see
yeah.
further out, to get greater standout, and deliver precision fire.
Yeah.
And the way that the squad can do it in Ukraine is via drones.
Yeah.
You know, and it should be the same here. I mean, I'd like to see the Marine Rifle Squad reconfigured.
There have been, going back even like 20 years now, like doctrinal attempts to integrate drones into the squad-sized element. And I haven't gone through and read infantry doctrine right now. I don't
Shame
know.
on you.
I don't know exactly what's in there. I apologize in
Normally you
advance.
wait till later at night
they're-
and curl up in bed.
Well,
with an
there's
FM.
They just put out the new FM on Russian tactics that I have to thumb through. So yeah, sorry, man.
One thing at a time.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying that is something that
It's that old
they're
Pornhub.
thinking about. So I would say future trend. Yeah.
I definitely, it's
Yeah, I
definitely.
hope so.
It's. Honestly, I think it's probably one of the next stages of, like, vehicle-borne IEDs. Like, it's like drones are a very low cost. You know, and you don't have to find, like, the mentally disabled guy or the guy who you can put under duress for his family to, like, walk or drive an IED into a checkpoint now.
Yeah.
If you can just fly a drone 5 feet off the ground, you know, into a checkpoint, like, it's going to be a massive problem for asymmetrical warfare in the future.
And it's and along that border in Israel, I mean, it's a long border. It's porous.
Yeah.
There's drones bring a whole new
Yeah.
perspective to it. And now you're combining with missiles, so you make the interception problem for Iron Dome virtually impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do drones even pop up like a low-level drone, will it even pop up on the Iron Dome sort of detection?
They have targeted, but it's not. There's a number of things. I don't mean to bore you, but depending on where the drone's coming in, the angle.
Yeah.
It's put it this way. They know that the Iron Dome is going to be overwhelmed very quickly if Hezbollah really goes at it.
Buddy, you want to come up?
Percy up.
Come sit with us.
up.
There you go. This is where he wants
This
to
is
be.
Percy, everyone.
This is our
The resident team
yes
house dog.
our fifth co-host.
Perhaps the most
Percy.
intelligent.
Yes.
You know, speaking, talking about precision, I think I sent you guys the video. It was from Ukraine where they had, I guess, intel on a Russian, like a warehouse, like a storehouse, and they had trucks in there. And you just watched from the vantage point of the drone. It just flies, does this little thing, and then there's a warehouse, goes right into the warehouse and right into the back
I
of a
saw
truck.
that one.
And I was flabbergasted watching it. The precision of this stuff. It's
So
and I said when I
FPVs,
said I said warfare is just it's gotten that much scarier.
Well,
you know.
and then if you watch like the drone shows, the light shows that they do, you know, especially in like large cities in Asia, you know, they do these amazing shows where a swarm of drones will like make a dragon and fly through the air and stuff like that. So, you know, combining AI with drone swarms is something that's already happening.
Yeah.
And
was
so that dragon could easily be a formation of drones carrying, you know, something with a large enough payload to, you know, to hit a convoy, to hit troops in the open.
And that's a really good point because the main defense against drones is EW. You know, it's not I mean, kinetic solutions do it, but they're overwhelmed very quickly, and financially it's a huge disparity. But you know, with drones now, if you're making them offline, you know, I'm using probably the wrong term, but where they
3D printing drones and stuff.
and they're you know, they're reading the what's it called? Where they read
Like the telemetry.
they read the terrain and
yeah.
compare
Oh,
it, you know,
map
so
of
they're
the-
not
map of the Earth.
using
Yeah.
GNSS
Yeah.
so Hezbollah is doing that. So the point is, again, you're back to trying to bring them down with kinetic solutions, which is
It's waste of resources.
Yeah. Yeah, I think drones and AI, you know, not AI like Skynet, but just basic AI, what it's capable of now is, you know, it already is changing the face of warfare, but it will change it even further when people get creative about ways to use it.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think we're in such a, I hate using cliche terms, but connected world that even that kid in what some would call a shithole, name your country, whatever it is, they still are going to have the information to be able to do these things. And you combine that with, okay, you just flattened my village and killed my dad and my brothers. Now I'm taking that knowledge that I gained on the internet and I'm taking it to the bad guys, you know? So you combine all those things and it's crazy.
You just brought up a really good point. It's just, you know, occurred to me. Our problem is that we mirror image. I think honestly, a problem the Israelis are having is that they don't mirror image. They don't imagine, you know, so, hey, we're going to eradicate Hamas, we'll just wipe them off the face. Well, someone's going to survive. And how do you think they're going to feel?
Right.
Do you think this problem is going to, do you really think, you know, you can't eradicate, we've learned that with the Islamic State.
Right.
Eradicate an ideology.
You can't eradicate it. The ideal continues.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have to infect it with MTV and you know, Air Jordans. Like you have to change the mentality.
Give them an alternative.
Yeah.
You have to give them a positive alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
not
just
that
like-
MTV is necessarily
No,
a
I know
positive
what you're saying,
alternative.
though, yeah,
But you know, it's like something different.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
If you're a poor Shia or, you know, just impoverished in Lebanon, I'm not going to overstate it because but the point is, Hezbollah is everything to you.
Yeah.
Your family, you are beholden to them, and they're not doing it out of the good of their heart.
Right.
It's the grip that they
Yeah.
have on
Right.
that community.
Right.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Has Andy ever been approached to be the frontman for a Billy Idol band?
That's so flattering. I really like that. No,
answer
I
is
can't
yes.
sing. But what happened to Billy Idol, by the way? Is he still alive?
I think he's still
I
rocking.
think he's still.
Oh
around.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, really.
Dave, I don't know what cologne you have on, but Percy is just all over you. Yeah, you. buddy.
Tony Aiello, thank you very much for the very generous donation. We deeply appreciate it.
What do you do for guys who donate?
We got them ask a question.
Oh, that's cool.
But if they don't have a question, we'll say thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, there's no more super chats.
Colombian peso. It's from Colombia.
Nice.
So what next? What are you going to take the team house to? You're talking about you've achieved a plateau of success, but where to now? Aside from Eyes On, which clearly has boosted you into
Yes.
superstardom.
I think we deserve a spot at SHOT Show. See if
You
Madam-
wanna
see
go
if Madam
back?
Butterfly is there.
You wanna
again.
go back?
No, I have no desire.
I went with you like 3 or 4 years, right?
Remember Madam Butterfly?
Yeah, man, I do.
Yeah.
I remember her.
Oh,
Where- What's this?
She was a Chinese spy that was there.
We spoke about
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell it.
This
Tell the
girl.
story.
So we were in a hotel lobby, me, Jason,
Stories always begin well with
and,
that line.
and another guy I knew, and then he brought in like maybe 3 of his friends with the Department of Justice.
Who, Jason's?
No, it's
No, a third
other
guy. So we're all hanging out, having drinks in this lobby in Las Vegas, and this woman comes and like sits down with us. One of the DOJ guys
So
went and talked
she had
to
been
her.
sitting down the way a little bit, like literally by herself, and good-looking woman and all. And remember,
wearing
like,
a suit top,
these
suit
old
jacket
guys-
top and nothing else.
there are
Basically.
these guys like in their 80s walking by, like on their canes, and one of them stopped and said to her, "You're beautiful," and she's like, "Thank you," and all. So she's sitting by herself. So Jack and I
Where
are,
is this, by the way?
look,
Vegas.
This is in Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah,
What are
SHOT
you doing?
Show.
You're
And-
working in Vegas?
Yeah, and Jack's like, "She's coming down here, guaranteed." And before he even finished the sentence, one of the other guys invited her down, and so she sat in the middle of us, and she's like, "Where are you from? Blah blah blah, this and that." And Jack and I are just like,
What
she's
clear-
here. We're just
What
yeah.
clearances?
Yeah, we were
what
just-
clearances do you have?
Yeah, we were
Did
just
you sit by me
yeah.
drinking?
The DOJ guys were getting sloppy drunk, like leaving
Oh
their
my gosh, it was
badges with her and
horrible.
stuff.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh
and
my
and
God.
she's like, "Oh, I'm here for the electronics show," and we're
Yeah.
just being loud. We're like, "Yeah, okay." And so finally, either one of them or her said, "Hey, let's go back to your hotel." And so she looks at us. She's like, "Are you guys coming?" We're like, "No." And she's trying to convince us her hardest. And
Yeah, she like grabbed me by the hand and
Yeah.
was like rubbing my hand, like,
Yep.
"Oh, you should come with us."
yeah, she come with, and we were like, "No." And I said, and I was like, "Not today, Madam Butterfly." And then it kind of just stuck. Yeah, so Jack wrote a really nice article about it. It
Well,
was-
she asked me what I do, and I was like, "Oh, I'm a journalist." And she was like, "Oh, what kind of stuff do you write
Yeah.
about?" I was like, "I write a lot about Chinese espionage."
Yeah, and she's like, "Yeah, it was."
What did she say to that?
Nothing. She just kind of like froze
Yeah,
up.
she
like-
didn't ask us to go
What is
back to
this
the
thing?
hotel after that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fang fang.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was wearing just a suit jacket.
it was
With nothing under
nothing
it.
underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
2 immaculate torpedoes underneath this bad boy.
clearly.
Like
bought.
she was looking for
Clearly
some,
bought. Yeah,
like
I-
definitely advertising.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think she worked for Disca, and she was just testing security. your
Yeah,
security.
exactly.
Well, I was a private citizen, so she could have tested me 6 ways to Sunday.
Yeah, but I have no desire to go back out there at all.
All right, I'm glad,
but
I'm
you
glad we
don't-
clarified
you
that,
don't,
Jason.
You don't hear of guys being hooked that way, do you? It's normally money, or it's just idiocy like
I
that.
think with MSS, with Chinese intel, they just throw everything. at
Yeah.
it. Because normally the way that would work, if in a perfect situation for them, 1 or 2 or 1 would go back to the room, things would happen, and in the next room you're being filmed and then it, eventually someone comes to you and says, "This is what we have." After they've done their research, we know you have a wife and kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
What are you
Russians
gonna
would
do?
do that. Like the Russians and the Chinese aren't afraid of that honeypot.
I heard a story about I think it was a naval officer actually, and they sent a couple prostitutes to his door, and he's like, no, thank you, goodbye. And after the second girl, and he rejected her, then a third knock comes, and they sent the dude.
Yep.
Yeah. Because they're like, oh, well, what's
What's
this
what's
guy
wrong with this
Let's
guy?
spitball.
Yeah.
And see
You
what
said
works.
Navy guy.
Yeah, exactly. What's
not gay if
interesting
you're
though,
underway.
talking about AI and drone warfare is what happens when this becomes, because we already have amazing deepfake technology.
Yep.
So what happens when they don't even actually need to run a honeypot? When they can
They
just,
can just
deep
insert
fake
you
it.
into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
they can just
absolutely.
deep fake it
Yeah.
Yeah.
and say, we have this.
Like Max Blumenthal did to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's got an axe to grind.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we talk about your show.
I
Your show
wasn't
being,
worth a honeypot.
we talk about your show being apolitical, and we do our best to keep ours apolitical too. And it's like even though you want to keep it apolitical, there are topics. Israel and Ukraine are two of those topics.
I don't think we should say apolitical. We just don't want it to be
Not partisan.
dumb.
Yeah, partisan.
Not
Exactly.
partisan.
Absolutely.
It
Right.
has to be political,
Yeah.
otherwise it's
Right.
uninteresting.
Right. Right. Yeah. But there will be people who will make what you say political. I mean, just talking about Israel, there are very strong political feelings on both sides
Absolutely.
of this issue. In fact, this wasn't a paid question, but I noticed it. One of the viewers asked about the lives lost in Gaza, and it's like that's a very real concern.
Absolutely, as it should be.
But it's also one of those things where, like during World War II, nobody asked about innocent lives lost because there's a recognized war going on, right? And then we have Israel, who is facing, or at least from their perspective, is facing what we would term as an existential threat. Their ability to exist, with Hamas and Hezbollah and these other actors. And how do they respond in Gaza? Like, how do they? There's loss of civilian life, but can they quit? Can they not do that?
It's also, I mean, the IDF's having some command and control issues where they're executing their own people who come out waving a white flag. They're running around.
20%, they estimate 20% blue on blue.
They're
casualties.
displaying ladies' underwear on their TikTok videos. I mean, they're having some pretty serious internal issues and when failures of discipline in their own ranks. And that's another part of the issue.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable.
There's definitely, one of the signs. When you get casualties that high, it's often a sign of if it's not guys deliberately killing civilians, which I don't believe it is, it's a sign of lack of training. It's
Sometimes the absence of orders is worse than bad orders.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, especially blue on blue, figures like that.
Yeah.
Like that. That's a training issue.
Now they're learning some. They were talking to me how they worked out how to prevent blue on blue. They're learning some hard lessons. I'm not making a comment. I'm just saying.
No.
For us, that would be a real concern,
Right.
right? Yes, the calculus is probably different to them because of what I've said. They, the survival of the Jewish state is everything to them, and that's not me, making a comment about it. I'm just saying that is, you've got to understand that is.
Yeah.
And my death, your death, his, even Percy, if the state can survive and we have to die for it, then that's,
Right.
that's
Right.
the way it is. Now, we talk that way in the States, so thank you for fighting for my freedom, but come on,
It's
really?
abstract.
No one gives a shit.
Yeah.
I mean, Afghanistan and Iraq didn't even make the front page most of the time. No one.
Yeah.
Dave, Tony added a question.
Okay.
One of the top, one of the last.
Okay.
But I don't have an answer.
Okay,
So yeah, for that.
Tony Ayo, what do you suggest Israel do at this stage? They were attacked in a way that is analogous to our 9/11. Look how we reacted. How can they stand down while being attacked by Iran's proxies? So it's a great question.
Yeah,
It is, but
that's what I've been trying to
huge
explain. Yeah.
strategic existential question that
Yeah.
I hate to say it as a cop out, but we can't answer that.
Dude,
we
yeah,
can
I-
give your
I don't think
opinion.
Israel
I don't
can
think
answer that
exactly.
question.
I don't
Yeah.
think
They
they
don't
can
know.
either.
Yeah.
Damned if
They
you
don't.
do, damned if you don't. You stand down. Now it's you didn't fulfill what you said you were going to do, the eradication of Hamas. And at the same time, if they continue it this way, now it in the world's eyes, in most of the world's eyes, it will have gone beyond the scope of what they set out to do.
Right.
Because, like I think Jack said, you're not killing. A guy could walk out with a T-shirt that says, "I'm the last Hamas." Boom, you pop him, and then is it really done though?
Right.
You know.
Right.
So now, how far beyond the scope of what your parameters are you willing to go? So I think now it's a matter of how can we save. I hate saying save face because it's more than that. It's like you said, the survival of the Jewish state. How can we quote unquote save face without going beyond where we have gone right now? You know, because again, Hamas is going to pop up somewhere else. Hezbollah is going to, at some point, see that vacuum and step in.
Right.
So now it becomes something else, and it gets even wider. But again, I don't think this crappy answer is we can't answer that. Israel can't answer that right now.
Yeah.
But I think they need to turn their ears outward a little bit and listen to what the world is saying. Not necessarily do what they're saying, but listen to what
They've got a
saying.
strategic communication problem.
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah.
And because of that, their real point or their real issue gets drowned
Yeah.
in that.
Right. And
So
the
their real
propaganda
point is
They've
this:
already lost that war.
Iran.
Yeah.
Iran is the enemy.
Yeah.
Iran isn't just our enemy. Iran is
Right.
an enemy of the free world.
Yeah.
And something needs to be done about Iran.
Right.
And all this other stuff, then that becomes manageable. But as long as Iran is there, this shit, we can mow the grass all we want, and
Yeah.
it's just going to get worse and
Yeah.
worse.
It's
But they
interest-
need the U.S. on side. right?
It's interesting to me,
what
sort
do
of
you
the
do?
sympathies that Iran gains in the West, and in particular in the U.S., when they have such a tyrannical rule over their own people. Like, how can anybody look at them with a modicum of sympathy when they enforce, these harsh laws for women, when they, like shoot protesters, when they do these things, and yet people somehow look at Iran as some sort of like victim.
I think what it seems like to me is that the average American citizen doesn't see themselves as being sympathetic to Iran. They see themselves as being sympathetic to one step down, Palestinians.
Right. Right.
The victims of Iran's injecting themselves into the situation, and Israel and the people in the middle. I don't think they really see themselves as supporting or sympathizing with Iran because they don't see Iran. I think that that's being blocked by the poor victims in the middle. So they just see you're killing these kids, you're killing these women and children and poor old people. Doesn't matter who above or below is causing the issue, But now from the Israeli point of view and for those who support Israel, it's up. It goes right past those victims that you're supporting Iran, you're supporting Hamas, all those other things. And again, those people are caught in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think, and I know I'm probably going to catch hell for it, but I think you can not necessarily be on both sides, but you can have two mindsets. You can support the state of Israel, or I should say the Israeli people, not necessarily their government, and you can feel for the victims in Palestine at the exact same time. Again, we're going political, but it's just like with politics here in the U.S. People are black or white, one side or the other.
Yeah.
When the issues that come into politics, you can be of two mindsets with it.
Right.
And I think that's where to go back to what I was saying, the average person doesn't see themselves as being sympathetic to Iran. They see themselves as being sympathetic to the plight, whatever it is, whatever side it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Dave, do you think it's sympathy, or do you think it's, from governmental perspective, they'd say, hey, this is realpolitik. We can't just treat Iran. If we treat Iran as an adversary or as a pariah, then it's going to be. But I think what we miss, and I say this because when I was I had to take a close look. Actually, I've been to Iran. That doesn't make me an expert at all. But the sad thing about that is the people are awesome. Iranian people are
right.
And they are smart, sophisticated, and super nice. I mean, I never. And people were fighting me in the homes and everything. But the regime, no one in their right mind, presented with the facts, can deny that the Iranian regime is focused not just on the destruction of Israel, but other things that are bad for us too, right? I mean, and they're not going to be deterred from that.
Right.
And if you look at the what their leadership has been saying all along, I'll give you two quick examples, all right, of the long game the Iranians play. Do you remember, maybe not, but 1995, Hezbollah blew up a synagogue in Argentina, killed like 80 people, 150 wounded. Well, there was the Argentinian special, there was a long investigation that kept getting derailed. And they finally came up, 2012, the special prosecutor said he was going to announce that the Argentinian government had been, or there'd been some involvement, with Hezbollah, the Argentinian government. This is 2012 as Kirchner's special prosecutor. He was found dead the next morning, and suicide supposedly,
right,
even though just recently they did another investigation. No, it was murder. But my point is, Hezbollah, the continuity of operations, the Hezbollah that did that is the same Hezbollah that came back in 2012 and said, oh, we got to set this straight. Another example, do you remember the Vincennes shot down the Airbus. Iranian Airbus, 1988? Fast forward 20 years in California, the wife of the skipper is badly injured in a car bomb in California, planted by, obviously the Iranians.
Yeah, there was also a bomb put in the minivan of a U.S. admiral, and it was never officially attributed to Iran. Yeah,
that's the thing.
This happened in the 90s. Yeah, and there have been other IEDs found in Europe also that have been. We know it came from Iran, but you don't talk about it publicly.
There's one other just example in this. So the drone that hit Tower 22, right? I mean, it's a tangled web, but first of all, clearly that drone was Iranian, right? But the government never came out and said, hey, we've got pieces, here it is, because they didn't want to be put in the position, I'm sure, of being confronted with, okay,
what are you
now
gonna do?
Iran, now what do we do, right?
Yeah.
Well, why Tower 22? Tower 22 doesn't do much, but Tower 22 supports Al-Tanf. And Al-Tanf is slap bang in the middle of one of their land routes. Okay, so the Iranians there's three potential land routes. There's one up in the north, right, through the autonomous region of Kurdistan. I forget why, but that's been blocked to the Iranians. And then they've got the one going through mid-southern Iraq. And anyway,
probably because we're in Deir ez-Zor.
Yeah, but anyway, Al-Tanf is right slap in the middle, and so anyone who's been there does tend to wonder why the fuck are we here? It's a shithole, but it's an important shithole, and you can put 100 soft dudes there with the Indige army, and they're doing, they're more than a speed bump. They are a thorn in the side of not just the Syrian regime, but especially the Iranians. But you see what I'm saying? So that drone, it wasn't accidental that was where that drone hit, and it's not accidental that it's Iranian, as much as we want to say, oh, hey, this is just all part of the static. And the Houthis, by the way, launched a drone that hit Eilat in southern Israel, and that's a little worrying.
Yeah. Do you guys feel as though, like with the Houthis, do you guys feel as though the U.S. has moved away from
deterrence, and do you think deterrence is effective or not?
I think deterrence works. I think it just depends on the situation. You know, like we talked about nuclear nukes. Is nukes going to really deter the Houthis? Probably not. And you know, we probably wouldn't waste the resource on it. But I think it does. But I think that deterrence only works if you're willing to use it and you use it, depending on the situation. You know, so you know, in the Gulf, like in the 80s, you know, Iran pushed and pushed and pushed. We had our, you know, as we did, we have our battle groups there, and then finally it was like, you know what, screw them. Take out a bunch of their oil platforms, IRGC, you know, stations, stuff like that. We showed that we were willing to use our deterrence, but we haven't necessarily been willing to do that up to this point. And now it's reactive deterrence. It's okay, they shoot at us, let's shoot these things down. But now what we're doing at the cost of, you know, a couple of F-18s and some Harriers shooting down some drones, you know, now we've just, you know, thousands of dollars to shoot these things down. And is it really a deterrence, or is it, let's just keep shooting these things until, you know, the Houthis saying, let's just keep shooting these things until they run out of missiles.
When our own government keeps talking about reestablishing deterrence, like that's de facto admission
that we don't have it. Yeah.
We're not good at deterrence, I think, because we don't. First of all, it's got to be something that's important, right? You've got to either be taking away or threatening something that's important to your adversary. Number one. Number two, he's got to believe you're going to do it. Right? Those two things, and one of those two pieces is often missing. Right? Iran. You know, what do we do to deter Iran? You know, I'm not saying, hey, let's go to all-out war with Iran, but you got to bring if you want to do anything about the situation in the Middle East right now, you've got to make Iran feel some pain, and it's got to be more than sanctions. And it's not an easy answer. I've wrestled with this problem before, but that's the bottom line. You're not going to deter the fucking Houthis, for Christ's sake. No. They're having the time of their lives, man. They're executing the Marine Corps. What's it? Force 2030. It's long-range missiles. They got hold of our doctrine. Like this shit works, man.
And they're making music videos.
I can't believe
in between missile launches.
I can't believe those guys were you know, were criticizing their commandant. I mean, he's on the money here. Without tanks.
And again, deterrence, Cold War worked. Like, all right, let's go from, you know, the dropping of the atom bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was deterrence in your face being used. So the Soviets, you know, Germany, everybody else saw, we have it, we're willing to use it. Boom. So that worked up until the Soviets detonated theirs. Then it was like, oh shit, what's next? Then we upped our carrier. This is, I know, the bane of your existence. We upped our carrier
Andy
capabilities.
hates aircraft carriers.
Only now. I used to love them.
And we upped our, you know, our aircraft carrier game, and we were able to show our deterrence and then give examples in Gulf of Sidra where we shot down, you know, a couple, I think it was Su-22s. They were able to see, we can use these things, and we can pull them right up to your doorstep. And if you really want to go at it, well, now the Soviet or the Russians have aircraft carriers. Chinese have aircraft carriers. India has aircraft carriers. So now it's like, oh shit, what do we do now?
And more importantly, they've got shorter ship missiles, right?
Exactly. Now they have hypersonic missiles that we talked about on the show. That, you know, so now it's like, well, but we still got nukes, you know, and everyone's like, who cares? You're not going to use them, So what's the next step in deterrence?
Do you think that you know, because somebody mentioned Soleimani, do you think that was a good example of deterrence? Do you think it's something that we should have, like, kind of followed up with, or do you think it sort of was one of those sort of one-off things?
I think it was a one-off because I don't think we could have gone any farther. I think we could have.
We tried to.
We tried,
Because we tried to take out a bunch of Iranians in Syria and Yemen also at the same time.
Yeah, and I think we could still continue to do that, but for how long before it's like, okay, oh well, you know, before the Iranians say, That's fine. What is that? We just lost a general, replace him.
Yeah.
What's the next step outside of going into Iran and doing something,
Right.
which the Israelis have already proven that they don't care about doing. You
Yeah.
know? So, but then it becomes, do we get someone else to do it for us? Because then now we're taking a step back in deterrence. We just got someone else to do it for us. So is it really us? Are we really the deterrent, or
Right.
is it whoever did it?
So how do we fight these emerging threats that are willing to, whether it's China or Iran or proxies, Hezbollah or whomever, who are willing to put a bomb in an admiral's wife's car or, do these things? How do we fight that in a country that for all everybody's opinion of the CIA and for the mistakes we've made, we still do have a lot of checks and balances and value freedom
Yep.
and
Yeah.
human life, and aren't necessarily willing to go to the same lengths that our adversaries are. Is there a way that we sensibly and in a sane manner combat those?
I think let's just say from the, on a terrorism scale, I think we have to be willing to do what we're doing, which is, you hit us, we hit you kind of thing, with the caveat that if we know about it before you do it, we're going to get you wherever you are within reason. Again, I don't know that we're necessarily going to go into Iraq to hit. We know that there's a Hezbollah cell or whoever training in Iran. I don't know that we're necessarily going to go in there and hit them. Jack will probably know better than I do if we can do something like that. But I think when it comes to state actors, I think we just need to up our human intel game, and while we're working, because none of these things work in a vacuum. So intel doesn't work without politics, doesn't work without the military, all these things have to be in play and in sync. But one of those things, from my understanding, is not broken, but it's still playing catch up, which is our intel game, our human, those sorts of things. And when I say human, I'm not talking about like that Chinese, lower level political guy. What's that?
Madam Butterfly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
right,
they were.
right.
I'm talking about.
I'm
the
still
Madam
wallowing
Butterfly.
in that story,
I'm talking
that's
about that Politburo member
Right.
who can tell us what G or whoever is thinking, so that we can get in their head. That's time-honored tradition, human, that kind of stuff. And once we get that back on track, then we can sync it with politics, where the State Department can say, or the president can say, hey, listen, we know about this. We know what's going on here. Or not necessarily, because, we don't want to give away, we know these things. But we know something is cooking. The next step is military. So why don't we figure this out now? And I think we've gotten away from that because of GWAT, and we can't focus on two things at once. So that's from my 10-foot level. That's what I think.
So
Dave,
go ahead. Andy.
yeah, fine. You made that comment about Soleimani. Obviously I wasn't involved in that. I was a civilian. I was retired. But when we were in the military, we all discussed that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think decapitation strikes can be useful if they're part of a campaign.
Yes.
In other words, there's a
Yeah.
messaging component. There's a lot of other things going on to contain what happens afterwards,
Yep.
to make it a deterrent. But if you just do a one-off and leave it,
It's not.
now you're just telling you it's a challenge.
Ideally, his number two's already working for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And often,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Right.
often it's worse.
Yeah.
I mean, the Israelis killed Nasrallah's Moussawi, right? Who's Nasrallah's predecessor. Moussawi was, he was, I wouldn't call him moderate, but he wasn't a Nasrallah. He wasn't.
Right.
He wasn't as, he wasn't quite as wacko in the sense of, but he wasn't didn't have the stature. The Israelis, let me just say this, they don't admit to this, but he was killed by a missile fired from an Apache helicopter,
Yeah.
and then Nasrallah came in, and that was far, far worse. So whacking people is very satisfying, but you've got to look at the second or
It's
third,
like-
and you've got to try and mitigate that with, again, it's like last thing on this, Nasrallah recently, oh damn, I wish I could remember the story, but he did something. Oh, I know. He fired on Israeli soldiers, right? And it was not in the Shabar farms. This was before Gaza. He sent a message, all right, and I've got no reason to disbelieve this, roundabout that came to the IDF saying, hey, we did this because of that, all right? So this was our response to you. There's no need for you now to, you broke the rules first, right?
Gotcha.
And so there's always this weird, kind of game going on.
Right.
It's,
Right.
Yeah, I think like Jack just kind of said, basically it's not going to work. The one-off is not going to work. If you're not, before you pickle that hellfire off, if you don't know who's behind that person that you're targeting and what that person is all about, is it somebody that we can approach beforehand, before we take out his boss or her boss, then it's just a feel-good thing. It's look what we did, on the news, and so politically people can say to their supporters, see, I took this guy out, I took this girl out, whoever it was. But if there's nothing strategic behind it, no long-term plan, it's just gratification.
we lost more guys to Al Qaeda after Zakawi was killed
Yeah.
than before.
And then my other question for you two is,
Well.
in terms of like this new sort of asymmetrical warfare model, like it's one thing to combat Russians and Russian intelligence because they're Caucasian, because they're white, right? How does the U.S. combat the Chinese? How do they combat Iranians, Hezbollah, Arabs, things like this, when the easiest like leverage that we've seen like the Chinese use and whatnot is the xenophobic, the racist rhetoric that you're only targeting people because they're Asian, because they're Chinese. So like how does the government combat that against very effective propaganda campaigns?
That's another really good question, Dave. I'm not just saying that because I'm not sure, and you guys know better than me, so you tell me. Within the intelligence agencies, obviously we've got really talented guys. I'm not sure, though, we have a pool of guys who really understand the adversary. We have guys who, for instance, I've heard all kinds of experts talk about Hezbollah here in the States. I've learned a ton. But what it doesn't teach you is what a hold that organization has. I mean, it's almost something you on the population of Lebanon. Why and what a hold, and the fact that you cannot separate Lebanon, from Hezbollah. You just can't, unless something that was never fully explained, in all the talks.
Right.
Or Palestinian or Hamas. What motivates them? What are they going to do next? Why? Their rhetoric has always been, we're going to destroy Israel. Now, they toned that down a little bit, but no one said, hey, we're not going to destroy Israel.
Right.
So,
They've never
remained the same.
recanted that.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
might not say it as vocally now
Yeah.
for the PR.
They're whispering it.
Yeah.
I think as
Do you
far
feel
as
Bernie?
the xenophobia and all that stuff is, and the racism and all that stuff is concerned, first and foremost, if the mission is a Chinese national or a known Chinese MSS or intelligence person or an African American Navy, guy or gal who's selling secrets, that's a target. That's a fucking target, plain and simple. So you need to get above the noise of racism and all that other stuff and go after the target. But I think on the other end of that, once we have a prosecution, because especially if it's here in the U.S. and it's against a U.S. citizen, FBI is going to be involved. It's not just us. You know that as well as I do.
Yeah.
So once a prosecution is made, show the evidence. This is why we went after this person. So that all that noise, external noise, that is being generated by by the adversary and stirred up here in the U.S. and getting mouthpieces to up the volume. Once all that's over with and a prosecution is made, lay out the evidence, not within reason,
Right.
Without giving away TTPs, things like that, and say this is why we went after that person, and it just needs to continue. You can't stop because someone says it's just like with back in the 80s and 90s, the racial profiling thing with police. Was it a real thing or is it a real thing? Yes, it is. But people still need to be protected. Car stops are still going to happen. Raids are still going to happen on homes or wherever where drugs are, where there's solid intel that those things are there. You have to do those things. You just have to do it within the law and reasonably show the evidence of why you did it at the end of it. So I think that's what it is.
I feel as though like presidents now are like it's very difficult for them to enact measures like we saw Trump with his like anti-Chinese espionage. I don't remember the name of the act, but it was labeled as xenophobic. And the thing is that, and then Biden like canceled it, but then I think restarted it under a different name because it's an effective program, it's a needed program. Yeah. But I think the challenge is that like the Chinese in particular are exceptional at propaganda, and they're exceptional at knowing the places to poke and how to message. And so I feel as though presidents now, and it doesn't matter if it's Trump or Biden or whomever comes next in the in the next 20 or 30 years, that anytime they try to start in sort of a anti-terrorism thing, because Iranian messaging or Hezbollah messaging, even in Iraq and Afghanistan, like the messaging was very good coming from the bad guys that, oh, the Americans are using human shields, oh, they're doing this, oh, they're doing that, and those things when they get caught up in the news cycle, like it's very hard for any administration now to start an anti-terrorism or anti-espionage thing that targets a non-Caucasian, like the Russians. The Russians are easy to target right now, right? Like, but
it's a limitation of living in a democracy.
Sure, absolutely.
But I see no reason why the FBI shouldn't have recruit Chinese Americans.
Yeah, for sure.
Who understand the culture, speak language.
I absolutely agree with you.
And I think that would be a strength because they really do understand quite a bit. There's so much that we lose when we try and
understand another culture. You just can't.
You can't unless you can get someone who's grown up on that.
I think the challenge of like the FBI, I think all intelligence services should look at recruiting, more immigrants and more. I think one of the challenges in particular with the CIA or with the Chinese is their reach, their intelligence service is so strong and so effective that if a Chinese American has any family in China, that's leverage for the Chinese intelligence.
And they're willing to take steps that we're not.
Yeah. Exactly. They're willing to say, hey, I talked to your grandmother last week. Yeah. Here's a photo of us together.
Do we have any final questions for these guys?
Let's see here. The ASGs were into Levi's and GNR, influencing jihadis with Western pop culture needs a rethink. Okay. Interesting.
What?
Abu Sayyaf group.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and GNR, Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. Refer above, Mohammed Savani. Refer above. I'm not sure. Do you believe there is an impact of inflation on global political instability?
Wow. I hope that question wasn't for me, because I'm the last person. I can't even balance my
Milburn, turn the lights off.
Sorry. I was just trying to sneak out.
You know what? He didn't
go into the bathroom and use the light in the
it's
bathroom.
on the wall.
Okay.
Inside the
You know what? You know what?
Inside the bathroom.
We
You're
need to
peeing on our
hire
walls
a
over here.
former first sergeant to follow him
I
around.
know.
I know.
And do this kind of thing for him.
I'm a first sergeant's nightmare.
It's like you're in the club and they're turning the lights on and kicking you the fuck
Last
out.
call.
Yeah.
And then you see what the girl looks. Oh, hey.
Actually, you just need a Lance.
still do it?
You just need a Lance Cooley.
He's not even drinking.
You just need a Lance Cooley to follow him around. Like
Where the hell's my radio operator?
there's a switch in that. There you go.
The gym next door
I
is
mean,
going.
if you guys are asking me to describe or explain quantitative easing and global inflation, I might be a little out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I will bankrupt this country in a heartbeat.
Turk February, thank you very much. What do you guys think happened to Gareth Williams?
Who's that?
I don't know
I
who
was going to
Gareth.
ask too. Who's that?
I don't know. I'll look it up. Oh, we have quite a few questions. I'll look up Gareth Williams so you guys are answering the next question. And Corbin, thank you very much. Any thoughts on Iran's embassy reopening in Saudi Arabia?
Ooh, I was gonna ask about that. If Andy had any, I just saw that something, if I'm reading it correctly, that Iran is really cozying up to Saudi Arabia, especially talking about Yemen, as far as Yemen is concerned.
I saw something about it, but I honestly don't know the larger politics that went into
I don't
that.
either.
Thank God for that.
Andy, a question. What do you make of the Iranians reopening their embassy in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think that
Mic yourself up first.
Sorry, Dad.
I'm holding it. Okay. I think that is simply putting one adversary on the bench. You know, I mean, neither the Saudis nor the Iranians' heart can really be in this.
Right.
Because the depth of the
The
feeling
Sunni
there.
Shia split
But
is
they're
real.
pragmatists.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm going to take, I want to neutralize this potential enemy. I think the United States is going to sideline itself by its dithering. I'm just, from their point of view, let's get the Saudis out of the way as an enemy. And at the same time, drive a wedge between the Saudis and the Israelis, you know, with the... So, but I don't think Iran cares now. I mean, I think that both Saudi Arabia and Iran are kind of, okay, I really hate this guy, but right now, I mean, this is the pragmatic way to go, and it's certainly for the Saudis. Everyone wants to make money, and the Iranians want to continue their campaign without having to worry about the Saudis. I mean, so I think it's superficial. It's window dressing.
Yeah.
It seems to me, I mean, I don't know, obviously, what's going on in any Saudi minds, but obviously, Israel, just from a purely religious perspective, right? Israel is obviously kind of an issue, you know, from a religious perspective, you know, but Israel is also not, they've never shown any interest in any type of expansion or world dominance. Whereas you look at Iran, you look at, you know, the Shia versus Sunni split. Iran is not afraid of expansion. They're not afraid of, you know, funding Shia militias and you know, funding these ideas. I mean, if I were in Saudi, Iran would always be the more sort of future, not necessarily an immediate.
There's no doubt in my
threat.
mind, Dave, that that's what they're both saying.
Yeah.
It's like the Kurds and the Iraqis.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to shelve these differences and
Yeah.
fight the Islamic State.
Yeah.
But as soon as it's over,
Yeah.
it's back on. Yeah.
So Gareth Williams was a Welsh mathematician, junior analyst for GCHQ, second as Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, found dead in suspicious circumstances at a security service safe house flat in Pimlico, London, in 2010. The inquest found his death was unnatural and likely to be criminally mediated. And they believed that it was potentially traced to Moscow-based mafia cells.
Well, you just answered the question for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
familiar with it.
The answer is Moscow-backed mafia cells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Ike Matthews, thank you very much. How would the Rangers react to a war with China?
I actually know exactly the scenarios that they're training for, and I don't want to. So, like, some of the stuff in Ukraine has changed, I think, or influenced how we look at some of that. They're looking at, so like our special ops guys in a war with China, particularly, special ops is like a supporting role.
Yeah.
Like the main effort is like carriers, fighters, strike groups, bombers, all the cruise missiles, that kind of stuff. Rangers would potentially be looking at things like securing high-end sites, like nuclear stuff.
Gotcha.
Not that, like stuff that happened in Ukraine where Chernobyl was taken over for a little while. It's not that like there's a concern that like the Chinese are going to sabotage their own infrastructure. It's more like what if they lose control of this? The same sort of, we looked at those scenarios with Pakistan also during the war on terror, like, what if this government destabilizes, what do we do? So some of those scenarios are being looked at, but also, I mean, Rangers specifically are a raid force, and I can, with them, but also other branches of service, naval special warfare looking for jobs. There's the thought that what if there are targets, pretty deep behind enemy lines that we cannot reach with fighters, bombers, cruise missiles. Gotcha. You might have to have people inserted and do, like, at this point, long-range patrolling, like 30-mile road march to a target and hit it. So those are like scenarios that are being looked at, but all of it would be in support of, the main effort, which is the conventional military. It would be the opposite of the war on terror.
Makes sense.
That's that's the disconcerting thing about war with China is that, all of us crunchies we're only useful if we are involved in the kill chain, right? I mean, if we add value to the kill chain, and we can sense out beyond, current platforms and systems, and we placed our guys there that they can do that, and we can bring in long-range precision fires.
I think one of the problems comes when special operations starts looking for work. That's outside of their
that would never
wheelhouse.
happen.
Like we look at like Red Wings or something like when they start looking for work and actively campaigning for things that may not be naturally suited for them or even necessary, right? Because they want, again, it's a matter of people want to be involved. It's a matter of funding. You don't want to be sidelined or irrelevant.
And yet special operations are the perfect tool to use in operations or activities short of armed conflict against a country like Iran, right? I mean, that's your main tool. Yes, you have all these other high-end weapons you can use as a deterrent. I'll give you an example. I mean, how do you deter Iran? Well, a combination of things, but you try and undermine the administration. You try and cause economic harm, right?
Right.
Aside from sanctions, what does Iran have? And it's got gas oil rigs. It's got, there are things that special operations potentially could do. In fact, we've done it before, 1988.
Right.
That would really hurt.
Yeah. I may have missed. So it's not Red Wings I'm thinking of, is it?
You're thinking about the Marcus Luttrell thing where an SDV team was used for recon? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You guys have to forgive my memory. Shit. Turk February, thank you very much. Okay, that was the Gareth Williams. Dana Daoud, thank you very much. Great job. Keep it up. Thanks, Dana. We really appreciate it. Dana or Dana, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And then, wow, we've got quite a few questions. Andrew Dunbar. Hey, Andrew. I've seen multiple people on the show say that the country doesn't run a counterpart to the old Soviet Sparrow program. How can we fix this? Is the Sparrow program the assassination program or the honeypot program?
I think that's
Sparrows were... In Russia, it might have been a honeypot program, but Sparrows in the Philippines
were assassination teams. That's what got Mike Rowe.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I didn't know that's how they got. I thought they got him on the way to work.
But it was the assassination team on the motorcycle.
Oh, okay. I thought I was mixing. I was thinking honeypot assassination.
No. So when he says
like
Soviet
in the movie
Sparrow,
Munich.
That's Soviet Sparrow.
Is that the honeypot?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're never gonna do that.
No.
It just doesn't work more times than not.
Everyone always tells me, like, we just don't do blackmail because you create a hostile agent.
Yeah.
It backfires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Frank Nixon, thank you very much. Random question: does anyone on the podcast have any experience working with training the Norwegian SOF, MJK Navy, or FSK Army?
I never worked with them, but I've spoken to people who, I mean, shit, there's a journalist that wrote a whole book, couple books about them that I have over here. He was a good guy. He passed away a few years back. But supposedly they're like very professional, have their shit together. And they recently, I hope I'm not confusing them with Sweden, but I think MJK and FSK may have merged into one organization. I could be mistaken. I might be mixing that up with another Scandinavian country, but yeah, they're supposed to be very good.
Yeah, I have a good friend who I think in Afghanistan was attached to Norwegian SOF and loved it. Like, thought the guys were top notch.
I have a question for
yeah.
Jack. Jack, what do you think about the new New York Times article a couple days ago about CIA involvement in Ukraine and helping them?
I don't know. I didn't read it.
Yeah. How do you feel about like first reported by New York Times? Those chodes.
It was brave and impressive, courageous.
What is that?
They came out with some article.
They should get an award for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, what was
The New York
question?
Times came out with an article a couple days ago, maybe Sunday, no, or whatever, a couple days ago, talking about CIA helping the Ukrainians ever since 2014 with
Crazy.
intelligence, and inside of the article that triggered me a little bit was saying it was first reported by New York Times.
Dude, that's just how that's their modus operandi.
David
that-
Cohen gave him the okay. Like, hey, you can
well,
print
that
this.
and also, I mean, they just hate being scooped, and they will never acknowledge anyone else who, any colleagues or any other reporters that may have like broken a story. They will never acknowledge it, and that's just how it is with them.
That's all right. They've legendized the Team House.
Dude, I mean, look, at this point, I don't think you could pay me enough money to work there anyway. I mean, they're having scandals like every other week. It's like,
It's like Seventh Group.
whoa, off the top ropes.
No shit. That was like
He had a
the Ultimate Warrior.
he had a
Yeah, the
ankle
people's
Dillinger.
elbow.
He pulls out the ankle Dillinger.
Yeah, I know.
Oh man.
Cool, man. But I mean, no, it's fun talking to you guys and kind of getting like updated on everything you're working on. Any like final thoughts before we wrap up? And if you want to tell us anything about the future of Eyes On and where you guys want to take it.
I think having the guests on really helps a lot as far as fleshing out our limited expert opinions. And so I think we're going to do a lot more of that. I personally would like to get out like Andy has and try to travel to some places and get, some more insight into things and bring that kind of stuff back. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Do you guys ever see? I know you took that trip to Israel. Do you guys ever foresee yourself like taking trips together and doing like on location reports
That's an
about modern
awesome.
things?
That's
It
a
is.
great
I would
idea.
like to. Shacho. Just kidding.
You sure? You remember back in the day, I used to make those trips
Yes,
and come
you
back
did.
sunburned.
Yes, you did. Yes.
How's
I
your
would love
budget?
Careful what you wish for.
The budget is not massive.
He's pulling out his wallet right now.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean,
massive.
if we stay in Airbnbs and travel economy,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I'll do it.
Yeah, we
Every-
can talk. We could talk about it.
yeah, every day a
My
different
father
part of
used
the
to say
world.
that, and it never happened.
Yeah,
We can talk about
yeah,
it.
we can talk about it. That's
No, I
my
think
favorite
that's
thing to
Dave.
say to my girlfriend.
Dave, that's actually really, I think it's a good idea. I mean, it was just coincident. I mean, I went to Israel for the book, initial research of the
Right.
book, but yeah, it certainly helps. I mean, you find things out that you don't. No amount of reading here could have told me what I learned.
Sure,
in a week there.
sure.
If you guys at any point want to have an expert on Eyes On, and you think I might know somebody,
Jack's
who
willing to do it.
has no, I will put you in. I will put you in. I will put you in touch with the guy
Yeah.
who can talk to you about soft signals or soft logistics or whatever the CBRN or
Yeah.
whatever the hell it is. I'll put you in
Okay.
touch with the
Cool.
guys.
And for everybody listening and watching, you don't even have to subscribe to something new. It's on the Team House channel. So make sure you like and subscribe to the Team House. Check out the Patreon. You'll catch Eyes On. You'll catch the regularly, scheduled programming of the Team House. You don't have to do anything else. We've made it as easy as possible.
We're making it easy. And
Yeah.
we'll even bring Percy back,
Yeah, Percy's a
who
good
is
boy.
asleep. That was our signal that we've gone over.
Yeah. Okay.
The world's our oyster, Jack. Answered your question.
Yep.
These Wallet is our oyster.
Good luck.
It's like trying to open one too. Trust me. You need the
What
jaws
is
of
the
life.
giraffe about? I mean, that was Patton's show, right?
JT Patton.
Yeah, so watch JT Patton's show if you want to know what the giraffe is all about. It became a became a you
Yeah,
know,
and if you have any
part of
you
our
know,
history.
you know anybody, we're in the market for a baby giraffe. So
Yeah, we'd like to have a baby giraffe here where the dog is.
Yes.
Just sitting here with us
Perfect.
while we're drinking cognac.
but it has to stay a baby. So
Yeah,
we're looking
yeah.
for a miniature
gen-
giraffe.
yeah.
me
Genetically
and
modified.
Dave are going to get a
giraffe.
bunch of like gold necklaces and rings.
Yeah.
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 Awesome.
This is why I like this show.
Velvet
A
tracksuit.
lot of
Yeah.
thinking minds.
Gold AK.
And me. Don't forget me.
So, guys, join us on Friday. We will be here with Phil Campion, who served in the SAS.
early one.
Good man.
Yeah, 5 p.m. Because of the time zone difference. And Phil, I mean, we'll get into it with Phil, but Phil was on that Sierra Leone operation they did. I think it was in 1999. So we'll get into all of that stuff with him.
Phil's awesome. Good
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I met Phil in person in Erbil.
Oh, really?
We were both coming out of Syria, and I met him in Erbil, and we went into a it's like a beer garden
Yeah.
actually. in
He was
Erbil.
still active duty?
No, he was
He's
out by
long
then.
then.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
out by then. He was doing a special for Channel 4.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah,
These gigs are great, aren't they? Wouldn't you love to do one of those?
you can ask Phil.
It's a lot of all those all the guys who come out of 2-2 SAS seem to be running some kind of show like that. There's
Yeah.
Who Dares Wins.
Oh well, the funny thing was they were sending him back into Syria because they wanted a good punch up for the show. They needed him to go like get close to
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
firefight. Yeah. I was like, okay, Phil.
That's the sort of guidance that you don't really need.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's also like most networks like they're
Shy away
huge
from that.
lawsuits.
Yeah.
Huge lawsuits.
Oh, yeah?
yeah. You would never see that from an American news organization. Like there's even like huge issues with taking freelance photography. It's nuts.
Wow.
Anyway, so that's Friday. Anything else before we roll out of here, guys?
No, just thank you guys. And
Yeah, what a
thanks to
Yeah, thanks
the
for
pleasure.
listeners.
joining the show.
We're super happy to have you
Host it,
guys.
yeah.
Oh, and you will be on Eyes On too. I'm gonna pick
I
your
don't
brain.
know shit about
Well,
shit though. That's the
We'll
problem.
make something up because you're
Yeah.
Talk
coming.
about Dave Park.
Yeah. If you go shit or Shinola, I have no
We'll ask
idea.
why a former Marine would want to affiliate himself with Rangers.
True.
And the commercial here.
Isn't that like illegal? Isn't that
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna
right.
say
law
some
against
laws
that?
being broken.
I think the more illegal part of it was going from Marine to Navy. Like had I not been a corpsman, I think I would have been. I would have had to have like given up the globe and anchor, the Eagle globe and anchor, like
turn it in.
permanently.
Painful.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Thank
So
you.
we will see you Friday. Thank you, Jason, Andy,
Yeah.
D.
pleasure.
And we'll see you
Super.
next time.
Fine. Bye, everyone.